All right, thanks for tuning in once again. It's Ishmael Sistrunk from the St. Louis American and STLAmerican.com here with this week's In the Clinch Boxing Hangout. With me today, I got my usual co-host, Mike Dixon, local boxing fan, boxing expert, boxing aficionado, whatever word you want to use. This man knows a lot about boxing. Mike, thanks for joining us this evening.
Hey, what's up? What's going on? Glad to be here as usual.
All right, man. All right, let's jump into it quick, man. Don't necessarily need a real long show, but had some interesting stuff this week. We had the fight between Brandon Rios and Diego Chavez. Interesting fight going into it. The question was, is Brandon Rios, is he done? Manny Pacquiao made easy work out of him pretty much. He's had a lot of rough fights, so people wanted to know, does he still have it? Going in there against Diego Chavez turned out to be a pretty ugly fight. It was pretty messy, a lot of fouling going on both ways, but at the same time, it was still an interesting fight. It was still a lot of toe-to-toe action. We got some boxing mixed in at times. Diego Chavez decided to use the ring, use his lateral movement, stick out that jab, had success doing that. Brandon Rios was pretty much Brandon Rios. He wanted to get stay in the pocket, work the body, work the head, threw a lot of uppercuts. But at the end of the day, the fight, there's a lot of controversy on the fight because it ending by disqualification. Mike, what did you think about? Well, first of all, I guess there were points that were taken by the referee. But what do you think about that disqualification? Was it justified in your mind, or do you think it was some more boxing BS, as we'll call it?
I guess you can make an argument that the referee, you can make an argument on either end, I guess you could say. As a spectator, it did seem like he might have been a little bit overzealous, maybe a little trigger happy with some of the point deductions in the earlier rounds. I mean, the two participants, Rios and Chavez, they're both rough, physical, in your face, phone booth type fighters. So you were bound to have some of those type of deductions and some of those tactics. It's just the way that they compete. They're very physical. It just happens that most of the time they're trying to implement their physical style on someone else. This time they had someone that was standing across of them that was really able to give just as good as they were getting. So it got really bad, because normally you'll see Brandon Rios, a lot of times he's the aggressor. From what I saw from Chavez, the few fights I have seen, which I think is just two, his most notable being the one against Keith Thurman, it was another rough and tumble type fight. So I guess he called himself trying to establish himself and show that he was going to, not be having that this evening. But, I thought, knowing that's kind of how these guys, earn their reputation, that there might be a little bit more leeway, and maybe Vic Drakulich not be so picky, but I guess he felt he did what he had to do. The actual final disqualification, it was getting rough and tumble. I could have seen another, point deduction, maybe another stern warning before he actually went to disqualifying. But again, I guess he felt that he had done all he needed to do, and that was the best decision to make at the time. I personally, as a spectator, I thought it was a pretty entertaining fight. Like you said, it had pretty much everything you wanted. It had good boxing from a distance, from Chavez in a little bit. He would try to work at range and try to, get some things done, and he was scoring. And then you had Brandon Rios making the fight tight in close quarters, and he was kind of, doing his thing, and he was looking good. So I thought it had a bunch of back and forth and ebbs and flows, and I thought it was pretty even. So, I just could have wished we could have saw, a more clear ending, more so on what the fighters were doing than what the ref did.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with the stoppage, like you said, it had gotten to a point where the fight was really ugly. They both were doing a lot of fouling back and forth. So you can understand a little bit why the referee, I think he was finally just wanted to wash his hands with, like, man, these guys aren't listening. But the problem, I think, is that his officiating, or his lack thereof, is part of the reason that it got so out of hand. You know, part of it is stylistically, but I think when you look at a lot of other fights, you know, Chavez, you know, he got penalized for holding, and he did that a lot where he would, you know, clutch Rios's arm, wouldn't let him get his hand out of there, which is annoying. The referee warned him about it. The referee took a point. But how many other officials do you see when that happens where they try to help them work their hands out? If they're holding that arm, the referee will kind of, you know, push his arm like, hey, get your hands free. He really didn't do any of that. You know, when he saw that it was happening, you know, he would warn him for it, or he would, you know, on the break, he would tell him about it, but he never really made that effort to keep the action going to try to, you know, hey, help him work his arm out. So, you know, slap that arm down, help him get free, tell him work out of that clinch. And I think because he didn't really do that, he wasn't a hands-on ref really, you know, he let it go to that point. He let a lot of those fouls go, you know, to where, okay, Rios got fouled, now he got mad, so he does this, and then Chavez get mad. So it was a lot of back and forth like that. You know, and the point deductions, you know, looking at the fight as a whole, you figure some point deductions were appropriate, but it seemed like the times when he took them, most of them were kind of weird, you know, besides that tackle, which I think warranted it. You know, it was just weird the way he did it. I think the referee, I don't think he managed the fighters very well. Like you say, it's going to be a rough fight. You know, you have to be prepared for that. I think you have to have that mindset and have a plan on how to work through it, because at the end of the day, the fans, they want to see a conclusive, definitive ending. You know what I'm saying? And it was a great fight. We saw, you know, they were angry at each other. They were talking stuff. They were, you know, like you said, in fighting, outside fighting. You really saw everything in that fight except an ending, you know. And so I just hate to see it end like that. And I think the referee, had he laid better groundwork in the earlier rounds, I don't think it would have come to that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, as a viewer and a ticket buyer, you got to feel yourself feel that you were kind of cheated. The chances of them doing a rematch are slim to none. I think Brandon Rios will probably be moved forward into these little mini tournaments that Bob Ram does. I think the only person that he hasn't fought out of his 4 welterweights is Pravnik.
Provodnikov.
The same guy whose name I've been struggling with the last year and a half. Yeah, so I think right now maybe that matchup makes sense a little bit with him coming off of a loss, and then he's out of the running for the Pacquiao fight, and now Rios has kind of had even though it didn't get a conclusive ending, this technically was kind of a warm-up fight, I guess you can say. He's able to knock the rust off, so maybe he's a little bit more prepared for that matchup, and maybe they try to do something with those two guys in December. Hopefully Vic Drakulich is not refereeing it, because once again, you're not dealing with 2 choir boys, and you're going to get another rough fight. And I think if that one goes without any type of mishap or something like that, I think you'll see a stoppage in that fight.
You think? Oh, that's a guarantee. I mean, one of them is definitely going out. I guess not a guarantee. They're both tough guys, but yeah, that would definitely be a blood and guts fest. And just you talking about it, I'm already getting excited about it. Neither one of those guys is a world beater, but again, their styles just make for an explosive fight. We know that Provodnikov, he has issues with guys who move, do a lot of ring movement. Well, that's not Brandon Rios. Right, that's not Brandon Rios at all. He wants to stay there in the pocket. He would be the smaller fighter, I guess, going into that matchup. Rios would. So it would be interesting to see how he could take that toe-to-toe from the bigger guy. So definitely, if that matchup happens, I'll definitely reserve my spot, make sure I got to be able to watch that. Got a nice place to watch it right in front of my TV here. So definitely look forward for that. But yeah, I think the referee, he just did a bad job in a sense, but at the same time, the end game of it, like, I understand why he did it, and even, that last foul where he, I thought he was raking him with his, with the laces. Brandon Rios said that he was poking him in the eye, he was thumbing him in the eye, and that's uncalled for. And I think Chavez did do a lot of intentionally dirty stuff. And it's like, okay, if you on one end, if you're gonna play by that, you don't live by the sword, die by the sword. So some of that dirty fighting kept him alive. He was actually up on 2 of the 3 scorecards by a round when the disqualification happened. But if you're going to fight dirty like that, you got to be prepared, especially when the referee had been warning both of them like crazy, So that's kind of what you get. So it's his fault on one end, but I still think the officiating could have been done a little bit better. Anything else on that fight before we move on?
No. As usual, another fan-friendly fight for Brandon Rios. He moves forward. Chavez, unfortunately, probably falls to the back of the line and probably have to work his way back to the States. He'll probably take some fights back in Argentina, I would imagine, where he's probably got a solid fan base. And we, probably won't hear from him for a while until we get some more, wins underneath his belt and somebody, is looking for a B-side of a mid-level matchup.
Hey, the one thing I will give him props for, man, when they interviewed him at the end, and they asked him if he wanted to fight him again, he said, yeah, I'll fight him. They said, you want to fight in America again? He was really trying to insinuate, like, hey, you getting a raw job here in the States or whatever. He's like, yeah, I'll fight him here. I'll fight him in his house. You know what I'm saying? So
there you go. Like I said, yeah, it's true fighter. True fighter. You can see it in him.
Yeah, you love seeing that warrior spirit. All right, speaking about warriors, Sergey Kovalev also had a matchup. Blake Caparello was his opponent. Everybody figured, hey, this will be a walkover fight for Kovalev. Interesting note is that he ended up signing to fight Bernard Hopkins. I believe it was a day before this fight. So there was a little bit of question, okay, is he focused on this fight because he signed this deal with Hopkins? Kovalev ended up getting dropped. I think it's the second time in his career. But talk about that, him getting dropped. Do you think that was, was he exposed a little bit? Was that, a trip? How'd you feel him getting knocked down? That's not something that we normally see from Kovalev.
Yeah, it's not something you normally see, but I don't think in this situation it's something, to be worried about, in my opinion. The knockdown happened so fast, and in the first round it looked like a good counter shot with Kolaev, maybe having his feet a little bit out of whack, and I think that contributed to the knockdown. We don't really know, though, because for a while now it seems like he's been kind of like on this continuous tune-up mission, and like they're building towards something. I think he's well overdue for this to kind of come to a head and then putting him in there with a live body. I watched Ishmael, as you know, tons of boxing, and I never had seen this guy, so it was a little bit a little hard to get excited about this fight. I don't know how much of a live dog he ever really was in the first place. Seems like another gimme, and as you see. They obviously were working behind the scenes towards something else, so I don't know how much of a live dog they were going to put in there with him. But no, it looked like he got, I hate to say it, maybe he got caught with a lucky shot. He bounced right back up. Looked like his senses were clear. His balance was good, and he started back in his game plan, coming forward with power. And by the end of that round, he already reestablished himself as the aggressor and already, took the momentum back. And, maybe 2-3 more minutes later into the next round, the fight was over. So, yeah, I think you definitely can make an argument that was just a flash knockdown. Maybe nothing to be too worried about. Plus, fighting Bernard Hopkins, who's not a puncher at all anymore at this stage, never really was in his prime. Even if he did have a shaky chin, Hopkins is not the type of guy that exploits that type of thing.
Yeah, well, I think for that knockdown, it showed in the replay that Caparello was actually standing on his foot. So I think it was more of a balance issue. It was hard to see that in live action. I thought, hey, it's just a flash knockdown, good shot. But when you see him standing on his toe, as he hit him with the punch, and it seemed like more of an off balance, because when he got up, like you said, he was clear. He didn't seem like he was hurt at all. He bounced right back up. So I think that was more of a balance issue than anything. Although it was a good punch connected on him. But yeah, the Kovalev, like you said, he hasn't been in with a whole lot of tough competition. I think they were really trying to build him up to fight Adonis Stevenson. That ended up falling by the wayside. Once he signed with Al Heyman. So there's still that lawsuit. I guess is still pending on between those promoters or whatever. But it was a surprise that the Hopkins fight came through and came through so quickly. I guess the reasoning the IBF Hopkins was going to have to make a mandatory defense if he did not sign a voluntary fight. The IBF, they look at unification bouts, get higher precedence over mandatory. So they had until Friday. Friday was a deadline for Hopkins to be able to make a voluntary defense to sign a deal. Otherwise, he would have had to face his mandatory. I can't think of who that guy is. So that's why there was a rush to get that fight made. And it's interesting. Like you said, Hopkins isn't necessarily a big power puncher, although he's shown a little surprising power late. He's not really sustained with it. We know he doesn't throw a whole lot of punches. But the interesting thing about this bout, Hopkins is a master technician. Hopkins has picked apart so many power punchers, in his day. You wonder if Kovalev is going to be effective. Hopkins, the guys he usually has trouble with are guys who throw a lot of punches, who are active, who are mobile, and Kovalev isn't necessarily that guy. Kovalev's a guy who comes straight at you. He has good skills, but he's not really a fast guy. He's not a guy who throws a ton of punches. He just throws hard punches, and he cuts off the ring very well. So it'll be interesting to see, how that matchup goes. Do you think that the master technician, the alien Hopkins, does he pick apart Kovalev's style like he's done so many fighters, or do you think that Kovalev's strength and his youth is just going to be too much for Hopkins to handle?
Well, I pick against Hopkins all the time, so this would be no difference. A lot of time he ends up proving me wrong, but I really don't care. The fact of the matter is he's 50, and it's just a guy to stop at sometimes. I actually like Hopkins, and I'm a fan of his, but I'm also realistic on how this story ends. He should have been out the game arguably a long time ago. It's a shame that we don't see our greats in this sport bow out gracefully, and they usually are beaten out of the game. Eventually, he's got to catch up with B-Hop, man. I know I looked ridiculous making that pick last time, but I stand by it, and I stand by it on this one too. This time, this guy's a lot more dangerous than the Sheer Move and Burrot or Perrot, the last two guys he fought. So I think the buck stops here. Could be wrong, wouldn't be surprised, But I gotta stick to my guns, man. He's 50, man. Did you see how much Bray was showing in the interview? I mean, he's a heck of an interview, man. He probably could add a little career in, doing stand-up comedy, man. The guy's hilarious, but I like the guy, but eventually I think it's gonna catch up with him, unfortunately, man. I would have liked to see him, maybe bow out after he got his redemption bout against Roy Jones. It didn't work out like that, and I think he, might eventually end up sticking around long enough that he might catch a beating. That's the way it usually works.
Yeah, I mean, Hopkins is, he's always shown a good chin. He hasn't really taken a lot of, just brutal punishment. So, I think he's good. I think if Kovalev, gets him out of there, I think Hopkins will probably retire. He's 50 years old. I think he'll wrap it up. But it'll be an interesting matchup. I think, Hopkins is a hard dude. He's tough. He has heart. So I think he can stand up. But, yeah, it's getting that time, man. 2 months away from 50, I think, or maybe when the fight happens, he'll be 2 months shy of 50. But yeah, this is a young, strong lion that's coming at him. So we'll see. I don't know. His technical side is so great, though. But I'll reserve making my pick until we get closer. But I'm leaning towards Kovalev as well. But I think we've just seen Hopkins pick apart a lot of fighters like Kovalev. So. Maybe he has up his sleeve. We'll see. Anything? What did you think about the judging in that first fight? Did you get a chance to watch that yet?
I don't watch Jesse Vargas fights, bro.
well, the only thing I'll say about that is that they were really everybody was shocked at the scorecards. They had it as a close fight. The judges had it, a wide margin for Vargas. And I'm like, I think all the judges were from Vegas. The That's where Vargas is at.
And he got a similar decision like that on the Timothy Bradley Pacquiao on the card too. Unfortunately, I had to sit. I think we watched that fight together. Unfortunately, I had to sit through that fight too. But he got some real questionable scorecards in his favor in that fight as well. I remember him again from the Showbox days, and I watched him on the Mayweather promotions. I just can't get into the guy, man. He's very basic fighter, very unentertaining to me. I guess solid skill set, I guess you could say, for the B level, but I just never been able to really get into his fights. And I watched about 4 or 5 rounds of this fight, and then you know how it goes. You start fixing something to eat, and and taking the dog out real quick, and calling your buddies on the phone. You're not listening. That's just the effect he has on me. So no, I didn't watch it. I got to be honest. I don't feel I missed anything, but all I heard afterwards was how lopsided the scorecards were in his favor again.
Yeah, and you got to look at it. If you're going to be Jesse Vargas' opponent, you got to look at it like, okay, if I'm going to fight you in Vegas, the judges need to be from elsewhere, And I've been out, I go cover the Rams from time to time, go down to their practices, go down to some of their games, and it's like this. When you go down there, even though you're covering them, you're working, they'll have some food set up for you, or they'll have, water or soda that you can get, and it's a real nice atmosphere. So when you go, you feel like, oh man, this is nice. They're taking care of me. So it's almost mentally in the back of your head. You're like, man, I want to say something nice.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So this guy, he's in Vegas. He's fighting in Vegas. The judges are in Vegas, so they come across each other all the time.
Raised in Vegas, which is odd. A lot of the fighters
are
transports. He's actually a Las Vegas product. I think they said from the age of 2.
Right. So he knows these guys. He's been around these guys. He's talked to these guys. They have to, boxing circles are pretty small, so they have that relationship. So if it's a semi-close round, they're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. So I think when you have that type of situation, you have to bring in outside judges. You can't have 3 Las Vegas judges fighting in Las Vegas with a hometown Las Vegas guy and expect to get a fair decision. Not even saying the judges are on the take or anything like that, but it's just human nature. This dude, you watched him grow up from this high, you're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. So get some international judges, get some California, New York judges, whatever. But I think until that happens, we're going to see the same type of thing over and over. All right, this upcoming week, again, we don't have a whole lot of big fights. It's kind of like this week, and we've been seeing this more and more recently. I guess it's just a little run where we see kind of the A side and the B side instead of a real competitive fights. But you got Danny Garcia versus Rod Salka, Lamont Peterson defending his title against Edgar Santana, Daniel Jacobs, Jared Fletcher. Any of these fights excite you at all, or any of them that you want to talk about before we sign off?
No, I think it's a terrible card. I'm not familiar with the B side on any of those fights, and it's just I don't know. I gave Showtime a lot of kudos for 2012 and 2013, so I'm gonna throw them under the bus now. They got to do better. It seems like Al Heyman's leverage has been fully implemented on the network, and now the fans now are kind of suffering the repercussions. These fights, there's no reason for these fights to be made. The guy that Garcia is fighting, who was the undisputed, doesn't he have two 140-pound straps? If I'm not mistaken, didn't he take one from Matisse?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's the undisputed champ, and he's fighting a guy that's not even ranked in the top 20. He's 19-3 with 3 knockouts. It's just totally unacceptable, man. There's no way to water it down and give him a pass. It is what it is. He should be far past these fights. For the type of price tag that he's charging to step in the ring, he owes the fans better. The network owes the fans better. There's no reason for it. It's inexcusable. I think Lamont Peterson's fight is a little bit more competitive, and Danny Jacobs, they're going to continue to baby him until they can, push him into the ring for a title shot. They'll never put him in there with anybody competitive again, I'm sure. That's been their pattern with him since the beginning. But yeah, it's a total waste of time. You know, really not even worth discussing on the air. I don't see how there could be too many different opinions about the fights. Garcia looked bad. They tried to give him another bone. Looked bad in his last fight. Looks like they're trying to throw him a bone in this one and hopefully get a knockout. Same thing with Peterson. Let him blow somebody out so he can, you know, get his, you know, momentum back going. And, you know, it's pointless, man. And they're doing the same thing on September 6th with Adrian Broner and Lucas Matisse, you know. So, I don't know. Hopefully this isn't a sign of things to come. And hopefully they snap out of this rut and get back to what they were doing the previous 2 years, which was putting on top-of-the-line competitive fights, man. It was nice having two premier networks as opposed to just one premier A network and then a kind of a B network. So, you know, hopefully this is not the changing of the guards.
Right, yeah, I agree. And like I said, even, you know, it seems like recently, I don't know if I would say the whole year, but recently, these are the fights that we've been getting, you know.
Well, think about what's their most competitive fight? What's Showtime's most competitive fight this year?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. What is it?
The last time that they matched them up real tight intentionally that I can remember was Broner and McDonough won. Yeah, I mean the Broner and McDonough fight. And I think that might even been December of last year. I don't even think that was. I thought it was January, but I think that might actually been December. Other than that, if you look at the guys that they have, which is basically Golden Boy stable, they've been put in very soft, all of them. You know?
Do you think that the whole, you know, this Golden Boy, Heyman, Richard Schaefer, like this beef, does that have anything to do with it, or these fights were pretty much, you know, have been made?
I think it took. I think it took a couple of years of Al Heyman working behind the scenes to get his, you know, I mean, he's a very sharp guy. I don't think any of this is a mistake. But I think his plan is in full swing, which is kind of what he was doing before he left HBO. You know, there was a lot of complaining about it over on HBO of him, you know, somehow getting his guys top of the line paychecks for bottom of the line competition. And, you know, there started to be a lot of griping. A lot of it was looked at as Bob Arum complaining. And, you know, we're kind of seeing that it's a little bit of truth to it. You know, this is he's kind of, you know, showing that this might be his pattern. I mean, it's excellent for the fighters, I guess, you know, maximum reward versus minimum risk, but not so good for the consumers and for the viewers.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of before you said that. You know, you see a lot of fighters talking about risk versus reward, you know, and he's definitely playing that in the fighter's favor. But again, Showtime, they built themselves back up, you know, into what they are now by putting those competitive fights on, by, you know, saying, hey, we don't care, we don't want A and B side, we want the most competitive fights, even if it isn't the biggest names. And that's how people got excited, and they really actually kind of jumped over HBO for a while, who started struggling when they left Golden Boy alone. So now they falling back. So
yeah, I mean, just last year, you know, they had you know, our local guy Alexander versus Porter. They had Broner versus McDonough. You know, they were just doing all kind of big things, and you know, just great matchups, man. Matisse and Garcia. You know, Canelo and Trot. You know, just a whole bunch of 50-50 fights. And, you know, like I said, I don't have the statistics and the previous matchups in front of me, but off the top of the head, and, you know, and we're heading into the first weekend of August, I can't think of many competitive matchups that they've given the fans this year. You know, they put Angulo and Canelo on pay-per-view. You know, put Angulo and Lara on pay-per-view, which, you know, I think I complained about that last time. What's the difference between Lara and Canelo and Trout and Canelo, other than only thing Canelo did within that time frame was lose to Mayweather and beat Angulo. You know, now all of a sudden you got to pay $55 to see the fight. You know, I'm not a fan of it, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talked about Porter. You know, they do have him matched up against Kell Brook, which Kell Brook has been so injured.
He's not fought anybody either, though.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's mandatory.
Yeah, but it is a mandatory. Absolutely, but that's an interesting matchup to see. Even though, like I said, Brook's been so injured, a lot of people, he's kind of fallen off the radar, fallen out of people's eyes. But that'll be an interesting matchup coming up in 2 weeks. But yeah, Showtime, you got to pick it up, man. We want to see better fights, and especially on pay-per-view. You know, you're trying to milk these fights on pay-per-view that are not really pay-per-view worthy. You know, a lot of people
with no undercard.
The Dana Mayweather fight turned out to be a good fight, but you know, when that fight was made, a lot of us were like, you know, really? Like Madonna, you know, Devin tore him up, and, you know, we didn't think it was going to be a very good fight anyway. So they kind of got lucky that was such a entertaining fight, you know, and so now they're doing the repeat. But, yeah, they got to step it up, man. They got to get back to that formula of the best fights, you know, because that's what we want to see. And we had a nice little stretch the past couple years, so hopefully this is just you know, a little downtime and it'll pick back up, but we'll see. Anyway, any last things that you want to point out, man? Don't want to stay on too long, but definitely want to talk about those things.
No. We'll totally ignore these fights this upcoming week. You know, get one the week after that.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us, Mike. Thanks for being on the show as always. Again, I'm Ishmael Sistrunk with the St. Louis American and STLAmerican.com. You can subscribe to the channel. We're here every week doing the show Sunday nights now. So we'll be back next Sunday with another show. Factoid couldn't make it tonight, but he should be back with us next week. Factoid, shout out to you, man. Go follow him at Mr. Factoid on Twitter. My information's below, and Mike doesn't do social media except for the Google Hangout. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Peace. All right, man.